stand right behind your chair to start. Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
All right, have a seat. And just to make sure that we can hear you, we're going to have you take your mask off. I'm going to leave mine on, but and before you begin, and so we can test out the microphone, could you give us your full name, spelling each of your names?
Like my whole name?
Yep.
Alisha Oyler, Alisha Marieeoyer.
And I think I'm going to have you pull up just a little closer to the microphone. Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Slisher.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. And Ms. Oyler, the key I'm going to give you is that when you speak, you should be able to hear your own voice over the speakers, all right? So just lean close enough to the microphone to be able to do that, all right? So first, I'm going to ask you a few questions so we can get to know you a little better. How old are you?
23.
23. And are you originally from Minnesota?
No.
Where did you grow up?
No, I'm from Arizona.
You can kind of pull back. You're actually speaking.
I'm sorry. I don't like this. Okay.
I understand. Yeah, I just need you to speak towards me.
Okay, are we good? All right.
Thank you, thank you. And you can even pretend you're yelling at me if you want to, or make your voice hit the back of the room, all right?
Okay.
So you said that you grew up in Arizona, is that right?
Yep.
What part of Arizona?
Just Arizona.
The whole state?
Yep.
Okay. When did you make your way over to Minnesota?
I don't know. A while ago.
Were you still in high school?
Yeah.
Did you attend any schools when you moved to Minnesota?
Yeah.
Where did you go to school?
Red Wing.
In Red Wing, Minnesota. Where else did you go?
St. Paul.
St. Paul. Okay. What's the last grade you completed through high school?
11.
Okay. Can you tell the jury the different cities or towns that you've lived in since coming to Minnesota?
I guess Minneapolis.
Okay. Minneapolis, and I assume Red Wing for
Yeah.
one?
St. Paul.
And St. Paul. Okay. Are you currently employed?
No.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about the types of jobs that you've held?
I used to work at Speedway.
And which Speedway, do you recall the location?
38th in Chicago.
All right. What did you do at Speedway at 38th in Chicago?
I'm a shift lead.
Shift lead? What does that mean?
Not like a regular employee, but not a manager, like kind of in the middle.
Okay. So not a lot of us have had the experience of working as a shift lead at Speedway, so I'd like you to just tell the jury a little bit of what's your day-to-day job like when you have that job?
I work at a cash register. I do paperwork. If a customer has an issue, I handle the issues.
Okay. You also work as a cashier.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to train other people or supervise other cashiers?
Sometimes.
How long did you have that job, Ms. Oyler?
About a year.
Did you start as a shift lead, or did you have a
Yeah.
different position? You started as a shift lead? Can you tell the jury a little bit about the types of hours you would work there? Was it a full-time job?
Yep, I work 40 hours a week.
Okay.
Well, I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. When did you typically start your shift?
Between 2 or 3 to closing, 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock was closing?
Yep.
Was it a pretty busy store?
It has its moments.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see if you recognize the area. First, I'd like to show just the witness what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 1. Oh.
All right, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. Ms. Oyler, we're ready for you now. I'm going to show you, first I'm going to offer Exhibit 1. And then I'm going to show you Exhibit 1. If you can take a look at the screen, just the one in front of you.
Oh.
All right. Do you recognize what's shown in Exhibit 1?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see the Speedway where you used to work?
Yeah.
I'm going to speak up a little bit.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. So, do you have something that looks like this in front of you? A little stylus? All right. What I'd like you to do is just take this and see if you can draw a circle around the Speedway where you used to work. Thank you. All right. And the name of the store directly across the street, were you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
What's the name of that store?
Cut Foods.
You ever go in that store? Were you a customer there?
Not really.
Not really? Just the place across the street where you worked?
Yeah.
Okay. And then do you see what's directly across the street if you cross 38th Street from Cut Foods?
Yeah.
Do you recognize that building?
Yeah, I didn't know that's what it was, though.
What did you know it was?
I never really paid attention to it.
Okay. Well, do you recall whether or not you were working on May 25, 2020, Memorial Day?
Yeah.
And where were you working?
At Speedway.
At Speedway. All right. And do you recall when you began your shift?
About 3 o'clock.
And do you recall specifically what you were doing at the Speedway that day?
Ringing up customers.
And at the cash register?
Yeah.
Can you just, again, using your stylus, point or maybe put a little X around the area in front of the store where the cash register would be?
Like right here.
Okay. Are you able to see the outside across the street from the cash register?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes? And you said you began working at 3. I'd like to draw your attention to a little after 8 o'clock in the evening that day. Do you recall something that caught your attention outside of the Speedway?
Yeah.
Can you tell the jury what caught your attention?
The police, like in that area, it's always police.
When did you first notice, or where did you first notice the police?
I would say like on the corner, right, like
You can use the stylus.
diagonal, like across the street,
You can use the stylus.
like right here. Oops.
Okay. And so for the record, that's across from Cup Foods, across 38th Street in what is labeled on Exhibit 1 as Dragon Walk. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Please tell the jury in your own words what it is you saw that caught your attention.
Just the police, try not to cuss, just them messing with someone.
Okay. And when you say messing with someone, and thank you for not cussing, but when you say messing with someone, could you please describe what you mean by that?
Like, I don't really know how to explain it, just like disturbing somebody before I found out who it was.
Okay. Now, did you eventually find out who the person the police were disturbing in your words?
Yeah.
Who was that?
George Floyd.
Had you ever met this person before?
No.
To your knowledge, you'd never been a customer in the Speedway?
No.
Okay. Can you please describe for the jury what you saw after you first noticed the police having this interaction with the person you now know to be Mr. Floyd?
Can you say that again?
So can you just describe, after you first noticed the police having this interaction with Mr. Floyd, what did you see happen?
In my handcuffs.
You saw. Where was Mr. Floyd when you saw him in handcuffs?
Over here across the street.
Okay, in the area where you first indicated by the dragon
I
walk?
believe so, yeah.
And then what did you see happen after Mr. Floyd was in handcuffs?
I don't remember.
What's the next thing you do remember?
Oh my God.
Are you a little nervous today?
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. You just take your time, and we have plenty of time to get through this, okay? And so, just backing up, you'd indicated that Mr. Floyd was in handcuffs, and just think to yourself what you next remember seeing after you noticed he was in handcuffs.
I think they ended up putting him in the police car thing.
And which police car? Where was the police car that you saw?
The one right across from Cut Foods.
Okay. Now, before you saw that, did you see the police take Mr. Floyd across the street?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes? All right. So after you saw him in handcuffs, you saw him being taken across the street and then placed in the car right outside of Cut Foods. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And you owned a cell phone, correct?
Yeah.
You owned a cell phone at the time. Yes?
Yes.
And did you do anything with your cell phone as you began to notice this incident involving Mr. Floyd and the police?
Well, as you guys seen that on the security thing that I had my phone.
You right. You had your phone. Did you do anything with your phone?
Like recording it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'd like you to do first, before we get to the point where you start recording, just explain to the jury what you saw after you noticed the police officers putting Mr. Floyd in the car.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I can't think right now.
Well, you indicated that you began recording with your cell phone. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And during the time that you've been speaking to the police about this, you've provided your cell phone recordings to law enforcement. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
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 All right. And there were a total of 7 cell phone recordings that you personally took. Is that correct?
Yes.
You've reviewed each of those cell phone recordings, correct?
Yeah.
And those cell phone recordings, do they fairly and accurately depict what you saw on the street that day?
Yeah.
And 2 of those cell phone recordings were actually made from inside the store, correct?
Yes.
And then the rest were outside of the store.
Yeah.
Now, those cell phone recordings, the individual clips, have been marked and disclosed to counsel as exhibits 2 through 8. You wouldn't know that, but they have. And at this time, I'm going to offer exhibits 2 through 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any objection?
No, you're
2 through 8 are received.
And then, Ms. Oyler, you also had an opportunity to review a surveillance video. Is that right?
Yes.
And the surveillance video, for the record, is Exhibit 11. Having reviewed that video, did that video, fairly and accurately capture things that you observed when you were working at Speedway on the 25th?
Yes.
Okay. And then you were able to review that surveillance video in a format in which all of your cell phone videos, or I guess I should say 6 of the 7 cell phone videos, had been spliced into or put next to the surveillance video, correct?
Yes.
And that kind of gives a perspective of when those individual videos were shot, is that correct?
Yes.
And then the combination of the 6 videos that we've just received and Exhibit 11, which has been offered and received, would that composition better help you and assist you in explaining your testimony to the jury?
Yes.
All right. And that, for the record, is Exhibit 9. I offer Exhibit 9.
Any objection? 9 is received.
And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and publish Exhibit 9. I ask you to take Exhibit 1 down. And when I say publish, I mean I'm going to play it, and at times I'm going to stop and pause and have you explain some things. All right?
Okay. Okay.
All right. If we could begin publishing Exhibit 9, please. And I believe we're paused at 7 seconds. At this point, you can see, and I'm going to place a circle around the officers. You see them there?
Yes.
And are those the people that you saw interacting with the person you now know to be Mr. Floyd?
Yep.
And your first interaction that you noticed was actually across the street by the Dragon Walk. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, as Mr. Floyd's being taken over the car, I think that we will soon hear your first recording. So if we can resume play.
Always some shit going on over here.
After you made that short recording, and that was you, I suppose, narrating.
Yes.
Okay. After you were narrating that portion, you continued to watch.
Yes.
Now, at this time, Ms. Oyler, did you notice any bystanders, anybody in the street?
No.
We're going to be approaching 8:16 and 30 seconds. Ms. Oyler, were you continuing to watch the events as you were working the cash register at Speedway at this time?
I believe so, yes.
All right, now we've paused at about 8:17, and at some point, did you notice some other police officers arrive on the scene?
I think so.
Let's resume play here. Okay, and let's pause. Now, at this time, I'm showing you two other individuals who are joining the first two officers that you saw. You notice those?
Yeah.
And what did you see those two officers do after they arrived?
I don't remember.
Let's continue. Now, from your vantage point inside the Speedway, were you able to hear anything outside?
No.
All right, let's pause here for a moment, and we're at 8:18 and 10 seconds. Now, as best you can, describe for the jury what you recall seeing the officers do with Mr. Floyd prior to getting to this point.
Before this point?
Before this point, for example, did you see Mr. Floyd get into a vehicle?
Like off of what we just watched?
What do you recall seeing with Mr. Floyd and the squad car just before we get to this point?
Like when they drag him out?
Okay. All right, let's resume. Now we're paused at about almost 8:19. I asked you previously about bystanders and noticing bystanders. At some point, as you made these observations, did you see a crowd of bystanders gather?
Not till like after.
After what?
Like after they did yeah.
Okay. So at this point, you're not seeing a crowd either in the immediate area or across the street at the Speedway?
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, let's resume play. No, you can keep going. I'm going to pause here. And this is at 8:20 and 20 seconds. Can I ask you some questions about some people, again, some bystanders in the area? Do you know who this person in the lower left corner wearing sandals and shorts and a black shirt is?
No.
Don't recognize him, never seen him before?
No.
Do you know the person in the dark shirt, hooded sweatshirt, and the blue pants?
No.
Never met her before either?
No.
Okay. Or how about the child behind her in the green shirt?
No.
Not familiar with her either?
No.
Okay. If you please resume. I'm going to pause for a moment here. Do you recognize that person, that officer? Do you recall seeing an officer interacting with a group of bystanders who would later gather?
I think so.
Can you physically describe that person as best you can remember?
I don't really know. It's been so long.
Do you recall previously talking about a bald police officer?
I think in one of my videos I was talking to a person.
Okay. A bald officer. Do
Yeah.
you recall as you sit here today what the bald officer did?
I think he was like yelling at people. Like before or after this.
Do you also recall describing a tall officer?
Yeah.
What did the tall officer do?
I think he was like, I don't remember. There's so much.
Let's resume play.
There's always some shit going on.
Pause for a moment. Now, what we heard there that was imposed at the same time as the surveillance video was your second recording. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
And again,
Yes.
that was your voice when you said there are always some...
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Had you continued to watch these events out the window that entire time?
Did I watch it outside?
From inside?
I think I went outside to smoke a cigarette.
All right, I'm going to ask the play to resume and ask you to pay particular attention to your video on the right side, okay? Freeze. Yeah, go a little bit further. Stop. All right. Now, showing you what appears to be a reflection.
Mm-hmm.
You recognize that?
Yeah.
Who's that?
That's me.
Okay. So that's you recording the events reflected in the window, correct?
Yep.
So based on that, would you agree that you were inside the Speedway at the time this particular recording was made?
Yes.
Resume, please. Now, can you please explain to the jury why did you continue to record what you were seeing here?
Because I always see the police. They're always messing with people, and it's wrong and it's not right.
I'm going to then direct your attention to the right side of the screen as well. You say that you briefly turned your camera away from the officers in the squad car towards the area that's right by the Dragon Walk. Is that right? Yeah. And can you tell the jury what you see here?
I see people standing there, but that's not why I shifted the camera.
Can you explain why you shifted the camera?
Because that's where it started from.
Okay, so when you say that's where it started from, I think your description initially was that there were some officers who were, to use your words, messing with Mr. Floyd.
Yep.
Okay, and this is the area in which they were messing with Mr. Floyd?
Yep, when it started.
I'd like to resume play again, please. Let's pause for a moment, and you can see that that would have been your second recording has stopped. And at this point, we're continuing to watch the surveillance video. Please resume. We could freeze here. Let it go just a little further. Stop. All right. So again, I've already asked you about some of the people in the crowd, and you said you didn't know them. I want to add some of the folks. There's a person in a white T-shirt. Do you recognize that person?
I don't know that person.
Never seen that young woman before?
Not before like this.
Okay. And then I think walking by, I don't know if you noticed, there was a couple with a child. Had you ever seen them before?
No.
Okay. And then there's a gentleman here in a dark hooded sweatshirt. Had you ever seen that person before?
No.
Please resume. Now, at some point, you indicated that you'd gone outside of the store to smoke a cigarette. Is that right?
Yep.
You continue to watch these events unfold as you were outside of the store?
Yep.
As you were watching from outside the store, did you see any of the bystanders interact with police officers?
I think they were like yelling at each other. I don't really know what they said. I was kind of too far away.
Couldn't make out any specific words?
No.
Do you recall seeing a woman with a black shirt and a white headband?
No. This was like a year ago, a long time ago.
Go ahead and resume. All right. If you could pause. All right. I had asked you about seeing a woman with a black shirt and a white headband. I'm wondering if now looking, if this refreshes your memory at all about this person.
No.
From outside, then, at your vantage point, outside of the Speedway, you began what is now your fourth recording, and I think for the record, that starts at about, was it 8:25:26? Please resume.
Oh no! I know that the tall dude that's leaning on his feet, they had him in the other side of the car, and then he pulled him out on the ground.
You could pause for a moment. Right. Whose voice was that?
That was mine.
Okay. And were you describing to someone who was standing next to you what you just witnessed earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. If you could resume, please. Pause. It seems that you've spent a lot of time watching this encounter,
Yeah.
and you were continuing to occasionally record.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could resume, please. If you could pause. Did you hear that ambulance in the background?
Mm-hmm.
At some point, do you recall an ambulance actually arriving?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. As best you can remember, can you describe what you saw after the ambulance got there?
I think the person was going on a stretcher.
If we could resume, please. If you'd stop. And at this point, you can see that the ambulance has arrived, and there's a ambulance worker coming out of the passenger side of the vehicle. Is that right?
Yeah.
In the time that you've been watching up to this point, did you see this individual ever get up from the first position he was in when he first went down?
I don't remember.
Please resume. Stop. All right. So you see that the street camera has now changed positions. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
do you recognize that person?
That's me.
That's you. Okay. So that's you, and you're holding your cell phone.
Yep.
And that's you recording, so we can give the jury a good idea of where you were at the time you were taking that footage. Okay. And that's when the ambulance arrived. You continued to observe. Please resume. Do you ever see, personally observe the officers get up off of George Floyd?
I don't think so. I don't know.
If you could pause, back up about 2 seconds.
I think I was more so like I was recording it, but I was also like trying not to get hit by the cars coming in the gas station.
All right, understood. All right, if you could resume then, please. If you can pause, you can see the stretcher is fully out here. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then I want to draw your attention again to the last officer closest to the head of the individual on the ground. Did you see him change position at this point?
No.
Okay, please resume. Your final recording as Mr. Floyd was taken from the ground, loaded onto the stretcher, and placed in the back of the ambulance. If you could pause, please. And then you see that at approximately 8:29 and 29 seconds p.m., Mr. Floyd is fully placed into the back of the ambulance. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Please resume. And at that point, if you would pause, please, at 8:29 and about 52 seconds, I believe, 52, 53 seconds, you stopped recording. Is that right?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. And you can take that down now. What did you see after the ambulance pulled away?
There was just a bunch of people yelling and fighting, and I didn't really understand why, but now obviously we know why.
What did you do after you stopped? After you stopped watching outside?
I went back to work.
And that would have been around about 8:30.
I don't remember.
Do you remember when your shift ended?
10 o'clock.
And so you worked up until 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Do you recall what you saw after you left work that day?
Tape. There was a bunch of tape everywhere, and they made me like, instead of going down Chicago to go home, they made me like go around and like down the street, like all the way down, I think like 35th.
Was the scene had crime scene tape around it?
Yeah.
You weren't able to access it. Did you make another recording of that crime scene tape?
I think I did.
And at this time, I believe we've already received Exhibit 7, and I'd like to publish Exhibit 7, please. Yeah, that'd be good. Well, you know what? I'm almost finished here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if we could just publish Exhibit 7. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's Exhibit 8. All right. If you could pause, please. And Ms. Oyler, you described the scene being taped up with crime scene tape and you weren't able to access it.
Mm-hmm.
Does this show the area where the crime scene tape was?
Yes.
All right, if you could resume play, please. And stop. All right, and you can take that down. What did you do then after you made that recording?
I went home.
And at some point, you were contacted by police officers, is that right?
Yeah.
They talked to you about what happened, took a statement from you,
Yeah.
and you voluntarily provided the videos to them, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Council's going to have some questions for you, but I think we're going to take a break first.
Let's take our 20-minute break. Let's reconvene at 3:25. All right, just a reminder, you're still under oath. Mr. Nelson.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I don't know if that's you or me here. So I'd like to ask you a few follow-up questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
If the court would, I'm going to show you Exhibit 1, as we had before. And I think that you indicated that you were about right there, right? When
Yeah.
you first observed everything?
Yeah.
All right. Now, can you just describe for me generally, like, the inside of the Speedway? Like, would you have been facing customers, looking out the window to your right? Would you have been standing forward and looking out the window?
It would be like to my side.
Okay. So if you were in the subway area, or excuse me, the Speedway area right here, in this area that you're talking about, like, your back would have been facing that way?
No. Yes.
Yeah. And so when you observed what happened over in this area, you would have been looking back over your right shoulder.
Yes.
Okay. And that's when you first observed, oops. That's when you first observed the police interacting with Mr. Floyd, right?
Yes.
And you observed him get handcuffed or put in, he was in handcuffs at that point, right?
Yes.
And you observed them walk him back across the street towards the area here where the squad car was,
Yes.
correct? Now, again, you said that you were working, you were taking care of customers, things of that nature, right?
Yep.
And obviously we know that you didn't film the entirety of the incident from the beginning to the end, right?
Right.
And that's because you were working, right?
Yeah.
In part, at least. And I think as we saw from your video, there were cars coming in to get gas, there were people coming into the store, that type of thing was happening, right?
Yeah.
All right. And you ultimately, you remember that you gave a statement to an agent with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
Yep.
His name was Brent Peterson. Would you disagree if I told you that that was on May 28th of 2020?
Okay. I don't remember the.
Sure.
Yeah.
We have no reason to, it was within a couple of days of this incident, right?
Yep.
And do you recall telling Agent Peterson, one of the things that you didn't understand was why they took him back out of the car?
Yep.
Because based on what you observed Mr. Floyd get into the car, both doors were shut, correct?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, according to your video, the taller officer just pulled him out of the back of the squad car.
Yep.
All right. Now, you also, do you recall testifying or telling Agent Peterson that the people in this area here, there was a female cop?
I don't remember. Oh.
All right. Yeah, sorry. Do you remember a female police officer being there?
I don't remember. This was so long ago.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to review, well, did you ever have an opportunity to review a transcript or an audio recording of your interview with Agent Peterson?
Say that again.
Prior to coming in and testifying, were you ever given a copy of your transcript?
I seen it or heard it.
Did you read it?
No.
Okay. Would it help refresh your recollection to look at a copy of your transcript?
Not really.
Okay. So you don't remember ever telling Agent Peterson that there was a female officer on scene?
It could have been, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of officers.
All right. Now, you testified that you took the first two videos from inside the Speedway,
Yeah.
And then at some point you went out into kind of in the middle of the parking lot area, right?
Yep.
Or the entrance where cars would be coming in to get to the gas pumps.
Yep.
You were out there on your break, right?
Yep.
And I think we saw, based on your video, that what you did is you sort of zoomed in so you could get a closer camera view, right?
Yep.
And you zoomed it to the maximum that your camera would allow you to zoom in.
Yep.
And from where you were standing, ultimately when you were outside, you had the opportunity to make observations about what the officers were doing with Mr. Floyd, right?
Okay.
I mean, would you agree with that?
Yep.
And you had the opportunity to make observations about kind of what else was going on, right?
Yeah.
In fact, in one of the videos, you actually had a conversation with someone else, right?
Yep.
So if you were standing across the street from where Mr. Floyd and the police officers were interacting, you would have one view, but you would agree that when we look at a camera, that's just kind of one perspective, right?
I mean, I guess, but there's multiple cameras though.
I understand. I guess what I'm saying is that when you're recording, your camera is only going to capture what's out in front, right?
Yep.
But when you're recording, you said you were, looking, making sure you didn't get hit by a car,
Right.
right? So you have the ability to turn your head from left to right. You can look up, you can look down, you can talk to people, and you can look around, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But your camera is still in that one fixed position.
Yep.
All right. So you were able to make observations. As this incident progressed, would you agree that more and more people started stopping and watching what was going on?
Yes.
There were some people standing in front of you. There were some people standing to your right. Recall that?
Yep.
And then obviously there were the people that were closer over by where the officers were as well, right?
Yeah.
And then even on the kitty corner from where you were, right? There were people standing there watching.
Yeah.
And if you went to your right on the other side, there were people standing there watching, right?
I think so.
Right. And cars were driving by and buses were driving by, right? And sometimes cars, we see in your video, they would stop for quite some period of time and then drive off, right?
Yeah.
And would you also agree that as this incident progressed, the crowd of people started becoming more and more vocal?
Like, what do you mean? Like,
Well, they started yelling more.
I think so.
Right. So, like that first video when you step outside and there's fewer people, there's not as many people yelling, right?
Yeah.
But by the end, when the ambulance takes Mr. Floyd away, there's a fairly large crowd out there, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of people yelling.
Okay.
I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And those people, some of those people, you could tell were upset, right?
Yeah.
I think you said that a lot of people were yelling and fighting, right?
Yeah.
So you can get a sense that people were angry.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And that feeling of anger is different when you're there and watching it than when it is when you're here talking about it in the courtroom.
I don't think so.
You don't think
I
so?
think if you're still upset about the situation, you're still going to be upset about it.
Understood. But in that moment, you would agree when there's people yelling and there's people driving by and there's people honking, right? That's a different feeling than you may still be upset here today in court, but it's a much different feeling now than it is then.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
All right. And ultimately, again, you took these various cell phone videos, you provided them to law enforcement voluntarily, right?
Yeah.
And then you went back inside, you finished your shift, and then when you left, the scene was taped off because it was a crime scene, right?
Yep.
I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So when you saw the officers bring Mr. Floyd across the street, did you see Mr. Floyd struggle with or resist the officers?
No.
And when the officers first brought Mr. Floyd to the ground and you saw the 3 officers on top of him, there wasn't a large crowd at that time, was there?
I don't think so, no.
In fact, that didn't happen until much later, correct?
Yep.
And you never saw the officers get up off of Mr. Floyd until after the ambulance arrived, after the stretcher was pulled out. Is that right?
Yep, that's what it said in the video. Well, shows in the video.
All right, nothing further.
All right, thank you. You may step down.